Luke chapter 7, verses 36 to 48. Now, one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, so he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. When a woman who had lived a sinful life in that town learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster jar of perfume, and as she stood behind him, at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of a woman she is, that she is a sinner. Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. 2 men owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he canceled the debts of both. Now which of them will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt canceled. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. Then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, Do you see this woman? I came into your house, you did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet, and therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven. For she loved much, but he who has been forgiven little loves little. Then Jesus said to her, Your sins are forgiven. When I think about the theme, He covers me, I can honestly say that I think relationships play a big part in my life as one of the biggest coverings that I guess I hide behind. I realize I find a lot of worth in my relationships, in other people's eyes, and especially from those closest to me. And thinking back in high school, I spent a lot of the time invested in relationships. I think when you ask people what's the one thing that you really remember about high school, some people say having fun, some people say, I don't know, I studied my butt off every night. I think for me, I can honestly say that I think I invested a lot of time and energy and thought into my relationships, whether it be my closest girlfriends or, and particularly specifically speaking, this guy that I dated for 2 years. He was my first, I guess, long-term relationship. And that relationship actually ended a week right before my first year as a camper, my first summer. It was the summer right after my junior year, and I only went to camp for 2 years, right after my junior year, after my senior year. And yeah, I think it was, come to camp that year, I realized, I guess God was exposing me to my sin and to my shame, and I felt like I was finally, exposed in how much worth I put into my relationships and how much of myself I invested into relationships apart from God. And I remember clearly that I struggled with my identity as a Christian, even though I grew up in church and I was like serving in youth group. I still struggled, and I think even during high school I found a lot of my comfort and I guess even worth in my non-Christian friends. And relative to the theme, I guess you could say that even my non-Christian friends was a way to cover myself. And I know I heard the gospel at camp during those 2 years, but it wasn't really until my first year in college that things kind of started to click a lot clearer, that my sin actually started to grip me more. Yeah, even in college, my freshman year, I avoided going to church, feeling like I was being judged, and just trying to cover over what people would think of me or would judge me of. So I remember specifically during spring break, which was very close to, I guess, the end of that year, my freshman year, one of my aunties from Rutgers asked me to come to this New Orleans missions to help with people that were suffering from Hurricane Katrina. At the time, it wasn't as if I really wanted to go, but I figured, what more could I do with my time? I spent the entire year on myself. I might as well sacrifice this 1 week to serve homeless people. So I went with that kind of mentality, and man, did God break me that week. The last day that we were there, I remember my leader went up to share like a sermon, and he shared the exact passage that I started out reading on Luke about the sinful woman that came, and wiped Jesus' feet with her hair, with her tears and with her perfume and all that she had, and she laid them down at her feet, and all the other people were kind of pointing fingers at her and saying, how could you even let this woman touch you? Do you know who she is? And I just remember clearly that moment. I was bawling in the pews right alongside the same people I was serving. The homeless people were probably looking at me thinking, why is this girl crying and bawling when aren't they here to serve us? But God really broke me then. And soon after, it wasn't just a feeling of being broken and being sad about your sin. It really, I couldn't let it go. God really does do everything and work everything in His own time, and He does everything for a reason. Thinking back now, I probably wouldn't have gotten to that point of trusting the people, even here at camp, with my relationships with them, if it weren't for my time as a camper and all the love that they've shown me then. And that summer, Donnie and other people that knew about my situation really walked me through. They didn't preach to me and tell me what I should know, but with truth and love, they walked me through the gospel, and it became clearer and clearer to me what the gospel really was. And I realized Jesus Christ was stripped naked so my shame could be covered. Before knowing Christ, I lived my life as if I was naked, always feeling guilty and feeling like I had to make up for it, having to cover over that shame with, I don't know, be it other relationships or, approval and acceptance from other people. But I just wanted to read you the last verse, the last two verses right after. Jesus says that her sins were forgiven. In verse 49 it says, the other guests began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? And then Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. My name is Xtina Choi, and He covers me.